Welcome to an Eyes on EB exclusive, Stirring the Pot with Rob W.
Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in to Stirring the Pot with Rob W. I have the one and only Jeff Winston. So how you doing, buddy?
Doing well, Rob. Thanks for having me.
So a lot's going on in town, and you've been you are a lifelong resident of East Brunswick.
Minus about 8 years down in Orlando.
You left and came back.
You have to come back. Okay. It's East Brunswick. You know, you can't really get away from there.
You give me a lot of credit.
Yeah.
Especially after getting away from the winters.
Sure.
And then, so we're going to talk about what's going on in town, a little bit about the BOE, a little bit about your experience on the BOE, where we are at now,
sure,
and what you think the future holds for the township and the East Brunswick Board of Education.
That's great.
So you were on the BOE for a while, right? For 5 years?
Yeah, a little over 5 years.
Over 5 years.
Left last, actually, a year and a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
So you
resigned. Some people say you quit, right?
Sure.
So let's talk a little bit about that. What was your experience? Why did you leave? A lot of people still don't know. You have 1,400 people in your East Brunswick Action Group.
Yep.
And so not everybody knows the story.
No, good. And that's really is a good place to start. Certainly, I answer to the critics. Did I quit the Board of Education? Let me help you. I quit the Board of Education. Absolutely. Mark Sismar and I decided that we were ineffective.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't any one singular issue that we took issue with. It was ongoing at the time with that makeup of the board. It was really a very tight group of 7 people.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of information was necessarily shared with Mark or myself. And then the last straw, the final straw that breaks the proverbial camel's back was in early February of last year. At the time, President Lax tagged on to the last 2 minutes of an open session meeting. And by the way, we need to approve this contract extension, open up an existing contract.
You're talking about Victor.
Dr. Valesky's contract. We need to open it, give him a 5-year contract with a whole bunch of bonuses built in throughout the years. Now, I wasn't at that initial meeting.
Mm-hmm.
I was recovering from a medical issue. And then when I became aware of it, the following meeting, it was not moved at that meeting. Actually, there was objection, as I had come to find out during that meeting, between Mr. Sismar and one other individual. Said, we have to pump the brakes. This is worth conversation, which I would understand. The following meeting, Mr. Sismar was not there, but I was at that meeting. It came back again, and really almost under the same setup. President Lax came to us with about a minute or two to go, justifying this contract that needed to be put in place. It was very important to be put in place. How do we pass now? And then ultimately, in closed session, there was a vote, and the vote was to not move ahead at this time. I only speak about it as a closed session item because President Lax has brought it up in the past. So apparently it was okay at the time, President Lax, to bring it out. So ultimately, that was the last straw. Mark and I had a conversation, and I felt at this point there was really no reason. We were muzzled. I had a lot that was on my mind. Our treatment, Mark and my treatment, very poor, very poor. Yelled at for disagreeing in closed session. One point I was told that your opinion doesn't matter. You be quiet.
Wow.
Robert's rules don't matter. I'll say what I want. It was really an uncomfortable environment. So I chose at that point, I think it would be best that I left.
Was that something they often said to you, or just about this particular subject?
Well, I don't, anybody who ever watched the board meetings, it was no secret. I mean, it was not a pleasant relationship for anybody. There's expectations, and we'll talk about this more if you want to, but there's expectations that one would have on a board. Keep in mind, the board has one employee, and that employee is Dr. Valesky, and no personal judgment on him. And quite frankly, I think he's a victim of what was traditionally the culture of the board, where if you have no goals, there's no expectations. And then if you don't deliver, how do you hold somebody responsible for something you didn't ask for? So it really became an untenable situation. So that, did it happen often? It was tough. It was a tough environment. Many times primarily under the leadership of President Lax. It was the case. But quite frankly, my first, this is funny you mentioned it, when I first came onto the board, first elected the first time around, I was brought into a meeting at that time, an orientation meeting. At least that's what I thought. And in that meeting, I was told you weren't supposed to win. You don't belong on the board. And at the time, president was there, and the vice president.
Who was saying this to you?
At the time, the president.
Okay.
And, I don't do this a lot, but instinctually I hit the record button on my phone.
Oh, wow.
So I actually have it to this day. I've never shared it. It's not that important.
Right.
But it definitely set the tone for what the next 5 years was like. But I'm no victim. It's okay. I'm a big boy. I can take that sort of activity. But I think what it really did, quite frankly, I think it was a positive thing. So it really brought us to where we are right now. And I think right now is an exceptional place within the township, regardless of what we're going through. But we'll get more into that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you're a big part of that with your group and your voice. You were able to kind of get people who normally aren't interested in the Board of Ed or even things with the town more interested.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. And I'll give you a real world example of that. Right around this time last year, the board was going through its budget, last year's budget.
Yeah.
And the meeting that was held the other night, which has gained a lot of publicity, line items one by one, this is what we're going to change, this is what we're going to cut, this is what we're going to do. What we all saw the other night, there's multiple Facebook pages and groups forming. There was a town hall, a PTA meeting held. It's a very important thing. Last year, at that same type of meeting, line by line, besides the 7 people who had to be there, the only other people in the crowd was Mark Sismar and myself. Right. So this is how far we've come. So the group that you mentioned, East Brunswick Action, evolved. Initially, it was Take Back EB Schools, and it was really as a result of what we all see. Look, you don't argue. My career, my profession is linear. I work with numbers. I'm finance. You can't argue that scores are going down. Mm-hmm. You can't argue that there's a systemic issue with curriculum. Recently, it's been pointed out on the literacy curriculum. Last year's curriculum issue was with Envision Math. There are issues, and you can't argue with that. East Brunswick Action's goal was to create awareness, or Take Back EB Schools,
right?
Involvement, understanding, and to let the public know that living in a township is a participation sport, and the only players aren't necessarily your elected officials. Your voice does matter, and your voice does change direction. It does change the tide. That was the purpose of the group. So when you say that I quit, with all due respect, Rob, if I quit, I wouldn't be here.
Right.
So I'm here.
I'll be saying with the naysayers.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate they are right. I did resign from the board to refocus on one thing. And by the way, when Mr. Sismar and I were on the board, I was posting at that time and I was speaking at meetings. I was begging people to look.
Sure.
Just look at what's right in front of you. Don't have to dig to see we have a problem. This thing that we're going through right now is not new. Right? It's just this versions of something that's been systematically growing for years.
Yeah.
For years. 10 years.
Yeah, no, it's funny because a lot of the reading programs that the literacy and issues that we're having, I experienced with one of my sons, how they, he was diagnosed with not diagnosed, they say he might have dyslexia. Sure. Said, don't get him tested, we'll just treat him like he has it.
Yeah,
and it's so frustrating because you're taught, whether if it was like the vaccines or whatever for COVID, to trust the professionals. Then you trust the professionals, and they give you the wrong advice.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you had that experience. And it's interesting. I am a product of the East Brunswick school system, and Your story rings true. In third grade, I was pulled out of class. I was a very slow to learn reader, and they dragged me to Carteret for some special testing. They brought me up to Massachusetts, to Boston for special testing, and they didn't have a word called dyslexia. But they came back with learning disability. There's something amiss. But then they addressed it. They addressed it very early, very quickly. I was pulled out of class. I was given all of the specialty. I do believe a lot of those things are done right now. But again, to hear something like, don't bother getting tested. We'll treat him like he is. Did that make you feel comfortable?
No, not at all. We had to get him tested. I just thought it was weird. It was when we left, I looked at my wife. I was like, what was that?
Yeah, it's a strange approach. And that approach is not something that any one individual who you perhaps dealt with. This becomes the internal policy on how we deal with this particular issue. And
it was.
Your stories, you're not alone. I've heard this from, as you've heard. You and I have talked about this in the past.
Yeah, and I was talking to Allegra about it. She said that's not unusual. Let's go a little bit back, if you don't mind, to take back our EB schools, because from that, you mentioned you kind of had a mission for that, but at one point it changed to identify 4 candidates. Right.
Initially, it was change the board, change the culture, change the results.
Right.
And that was our aim.
Right. That was your aim.
Yep.
And I think that's when I kind of got in a little bit. And then you were looking for a slate for people to run.
We did.
I did. And so let's talk a little bit about that experience. I was a big part of it. So
you were.
I know, some of the drama that went on. And
Got drama. Okay. A lot of the things that went on aren't necessarily unusual, but when you're experiencing those things, it kind of stinks. It's like walking on pavement on a 110-degree day. Sometimes it's a little shocking if you've never done that before. So
it's like high school all over again.
And there was a lot of drama. It was a made-for-TV movie. It was an interesting experience. I had not had any experience in that area. The foundation of forming the slate was, as I mentioned, with Take Back EB Schools, change the board, change the culture, change the results. And when I had begun the process of putting this group together, I have lived by a mantra in East Brunswick my entire life that was handed to me by my mother, who was highly political, more activist. You wonder where it comes from, in town. And what the good conclusion was, there's no real place for partisan politics in local government. People look to local government for a variety of reasons. I drove a car that if you hit a pothole, the tires would blow. I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. Stop making my tires blow up. Stop making me have $400 every time I take Arts Lane. So it was that sort of thing. So the group, by design, is nonpartisan. We don't want platforming of that sort. Now, I say that, but I will also say that we think there's a social responsibility within the group. We really don't respond well, although we won't necessarily exclude book banners. We're not, we don't necessarily, we wouldn't necessarily, and we have many anti-vaxxers or anti-maskers. We don't exclude them.
Right.
All right. However, if you're going to put yourself out there and make that position, you have to be prepared for the results. And there's one thing in our group I think that is so encouraging, is that we don't respond to liars very well. We call people out on the facts. We're high fact checkers as a group, and quite frankly, we have some of the smartest people in our group that I've ever met, and a lot of them are key decision makers right within our township, and they're okay, and they speak up. The mayor is in the group. We have council people in the group, and they're not treated any differently, but we value their opinion. Why? They're decision makers, and our group recognizes our elected officials and holds them accountable by the basic fact that when we vote for somebody, whether it be 5 council members or 9 board members, they're elected to be the voice of 46 roughly thousand people. And we hold them accountable for their decisions and their actions. And there's a lot in that statement, which I hope we have time to get to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of this, interesting things about the group that I think that came out of it was one of the reasons why I got involved, because I got sick of just because you were popular, you would get voted into something.
Yes.
And it does,
The drama.
and that always annoyed me, right? It's
Sure, sure.
like you didn't have to be qualified. You just had to kiss enough babies, show up to enough events. Not that that's not important, but overall, then one thing one of the biggest things I think that came out of this group was that people are going to think twice before running for something, because they're going to realize that they're going to actually be held accountable, maybe for the first time by the voters since I've been around in East Brunswick.
I think that's a very fair statement. When we put the slate together, I made a decision that I would not be the slate maker. Mm-hmm. All right. I wanted it to be with a group of individuals who truly recognized, look, you can't fix a problem if you can't recognize there is one. And a group of people came together, albeit smaller. It was in the hundreds at that point, where, now, as you mentioned, we're somewhere over around 1,400 or so. And that group, I said, you will be the pickers. You're going to pick the slate. Mm-hmm. And we put a call out. If you're interested, come in. We put together a Meet the Candidates Day, right, which you were kind enough to help us stream and put that together. And we had 5 people step forward, and all 5 of them were given equal time to present. And of those 5, there were 4 slots to fill, my vacant spot and so on, and Sismore's vacant spot, and then the 2 other candidates. And I didn't vote. I wasn't one of the people who voted.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
I withheld my vote.
Yeah.
And it came out as it did. So we ended up with Dr. and Mrs. Figueroa. We ended up with Jamie Falco, and we ended up with Dr. Falco. We ended up with Dr. Braun. Mm-hmm. So that, and where we landed, were 3 out of the 4 were successful. Essentially, all the doctors got on.
Now, you were part of a slate on your own campaign before, or was that Dana?
Dana was
Dana was part of it, but you had some experience being part of a slate. And
my wife is a councilwoman, and she was part of the slate that was put together by the East Brunswick Democrats.
Mm. And so right now we're also looking for 3 more candidates at least.
Sure. We're looking for 3 candidates because we're looking for 3 candidates because our 3 candidates to fill, but 1 incumbent will stay on.
Right.
Dr. Anna Braun was served out Mark Sismore's position, so now she is up again. So she gets the pleasure of the campaigning process yet one more time. But we are looking for 2 other people. Mm-hmm. Now, when I say we're looking for 2 other people, those 2 people could be incumbents, but they have not made any indication that they'd like to be a part of that. I haven't heard from President Guas, nor have I heard from Li Wuhang, who are on the board right now. Nothing stops them from coming in, but knowing what I'm going to call the altruistic purpose of our group, the fact that they're not interested in aligning with some of these more progressive ideas is troubling.
Right.
Where are they? Why wouldn't they be a part of this? What is it they object to?
I joke around with some of my progressive friends that progressives don't seem to be progressive anymore. They're only progressive on the real social issues, like equity and things like that, which is fine. But they're not progressive on numbers and getting the budget intact.
Well, it's the budget. It's the quality of education.
Right.
What's at stake right now?
Yeah.
Let's talk. Can we talk about that? Shift gear. So what's at stake? Where are we today? So we talked about the past, and hopefully that satisfied any curiosity on why and who. And at the end of this, just to put a really fine point on it, after this year, I will have no more kids in the public school system.
I'm done too.
So next year, I will actually have 5 kids, all in college for 1 semester.
Wow.
And you're done too. But that doesn't change one major fact. I am a resident of East Brunswick. I've been here my whole life, and it matters. Now, besides the education, besides fairness and encouragement of teachers and staff, the rest of us are stakeholders, and we have property values. Now, as I age, Retirement is, not some dim light in the future. My home value is very important to my next 30 years. I do know that every realtor in this town, although less and less, highlight, come to East Brunswick, it's the schools. And as I've said to the mayor and I've said to pretty much everybody, I don't believe anybody ever moved to East Brunswick to be closer to Route 18.
Right.
I just don't think that's ever happened. If it has, I'd love to meet you because you fascinate me.
I came from Red Bank back to East Brunswick, so.
Yeah, but because of Route 18? Oh, it wasn't because of the new Walmart? Oh, I just want to make sure. So people come back for the schools.
Yeah.
And if our schools value its intrinsic value of education and programming go down, our property values are going to go down with it. We are lined up for a perfect storm. If we don't improve the schools, we have property tax assessors coming in to reassess all of our properties after, I don't know what the mayor said, we'll say 1 million years. I don't know how many years it's been since we've been assessed. So we could actually be in a position where we if we continue on this trajectory, have a less desirable school district paying higher taxes. That does nobody any good.
Yeah, not only that, but the things that they are talking about, removing middle school sports, some of the music programs, and then language, that alone, I mean, why would you move here? I mean, if you have kids in the school, and it's scary. I mean, it could be a significant drop.
You can quantify all of those items that you just stated, and every one of them would almost come as a priority. Yeah, look, as I mentioned, I'm in finance. I'm a realist. I do understand. But how we got to the point where we have a business administrator coming in at $7.7 million over budget, and the state aid was only $1.1 million short, has to speak to a larger problem. We had this problem last year as I was leaving the board. I believe the number was around 5 or 6 million at the time. We knew this was coming. Now, how we got there is a little interesting, and most people don't understand it, that a few years ago, the state gave us more money than we expected. And people don't actually remember that, but we did. And it was the COVID recovery money, and we had to hire some people, which we made in many cases full-time and all of that. But we had this windfall of money come down unexpected. I don't remember the exact number, so I'm just going to use $5 million more than we expected. The amount doesn't matter. The principle does. So what our business administrator did in that 3 years ago when it came in and said, well, hey, that's great. Now we're getting, I'll just use a number, 200 million. So next year we're going to get 205 million.
So
that's how it happened. Because look, they gave us 5 million last year. So of course they're going to give us 5 million. So hold on. So you think, hold on, so it's old dogs, new tricks, right? So they come back in last year, they give us less than that 5 million, a couple of million less than that 5, maybe 3 million, whatever it might be. So that then moves to our business administrator's new baseline. And instead of learning that this may happen again,
that it's dropping at least,
it happened again. So now it's $1.x million. So now it's less. So and then you compound that with a 5-year contract that was approved. We knew about salaries. We knew about that. And then we have a board member who posts online that the major reason why this deficit is happening is because the teachers are getting raises and have health care.
Contractual
raises on a good faith negotiation this is the problem. This is the culture piece, Rob. This is where culturally, why a board member would state that without a disclaimer that this is only their views means this is all 9 of their views, all 9 of them. Right. Now, do I believe that's true? I know that's not true. Matter of fact, I believe 8 of them don't think that's true.
Right.
But the fact that our president didn't even walk that back.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Why doesn't the president walk that back? So I bring up that Facebook post. No, listen, it's been stated. It hasn't been walked back by I really think that the board president needs to clearly say that this is not representation of the board, or really what should be done is the person who said it should say it was a mistake and I'm sorry and it's a misrepresentation.
Is that something that the board attorney would tell you to leave it alone, or because it's such an easy thing to walk back, and it's almost like they're trolling by not walking. It's the strangest thing.
Yeah, I mean, I won't speak. I won't speak for anybody. It's what would I do? Look, when I'm wrong, I admit it, and I think you've been around me when I'm wrong, and I am wrong. I do make my mistakes, and I have the humility to say it's probably not the best thing. They may have been advised not to approach it, but that same board attorney spent a large portion of one of the first meetings in January, and of talking about board behavior and ethics, and in that was exactly what was done as something not to do. So I would think that the board attorney would have immediately asked for an issue. Now, there was in the open session following when that statement was made, there were speakers, including myself, asking about that. One of the speakers was the president of the EBEA about how insulting that was to the teachers. The school system is the largest employer in East Brunswick. I don't think that's a secret. And to hear that come from the union leader, I think it requires a response. I mean, I don't know. I think when you attack somebody and at that level and you're wrong, listen, I think the better person says they're sorry.
Yeah. Dana did an excellent job.
She does a very good job, and she's a highly respected leader. And she's also a town councilwoman as vice president. I mean, how many more times can you be validated as capable? And I believe, listen, I think I've spoken to doctors in Mickey. I have had disagreements on certain issues in the past, but boy, I respect the heck out of her. And it's okay.
He really called the board out, and everything. That was it was nice to see somebody take that leadership role. Of sticking up.
It can't be an easy job, and especially in times like we're in right now, where it is apparent that her population of those that she leads in that union is going to shrink by some type of factor.
And one thing, if you're involved with this, which is such a mistake by her saying, blaming it on the teachers, the board member, was the one thing that you should know is never go after the teachers. No. I mean, and
I'll tell you why that's true. This jumps back a little bit to your first question. My background, besides, in a blended family, having 5 children, a lot of people know, some don't know. Both of my parents were career educators. As a matter of fact, as we sit here in Freehold, my father was the supervisor of the social studies history department right up the street. Matter of fact, I had a little tear in my eye when I drove by Freehold Regional. Yeah, so and it was
you're in the original Freehold Borough High School,
which is fantastic
1904.
To me. And my father, who passed a couple of years back, was a phenomenal man. My mother, a health teacher, career health teacher, second career after she was an ER nurse actually at St. Peter's for many years.
Oh wow!
Which always made my house interesting because we spoke in very clinical terms, and you had it wasn't it was you have a contusion, it was very are you concussed? You didn't bang your head on the counter, it was the litany of ER. It was our kitchen was like a triage, and with that, then look. From an activist standpoint, which I hate the term, I like to think somebody who cares. My mom was one of those people. My mom was. I remember my mother walking around the back of our house with my RCA tape recorder and a microphone up in the air, recording the sounds from the turnpike, and then going to the mayor at that time and saying, "We need a sound wall." And there's articles written about her. She got Citizen of the Year or some kind of craziness because she raised hell and she got her wall, and that's the wall. So but that's the sort of thing. And my father was entirely pleased with it. He was very low key, and but that was it. Both my sisters, born and raised here in East Brunswick. Now today, my wife and I are very quiet about the things that we do. My wife, besides being a councilwoman, teaches art. As a matter of fact, we had a meeting today that she'll be expanding her efforts and taking on regular classwork for special needs
Oh, wow.
adults. She's worked with special needs kids. She teaches art and loves it. We are, we're Elks. We're involved in many quiet community events and groups and charities. I personally, I've coached Fast Break now. It feels like my entire life.
Yeah.
But which is a phenomenal organization.
Yeah.
A great organization. You get kids on the court who might not necessarily have the opportunity to play in a competitive environment of basketball. But these are the things that we involve ourselves with. My wife and I joke because if it's a Wednesday night and we have nothing to do, we get worried. So we start breaking out our calendars. What are we missing? And that's what we do. Why do we stay busy? I don't know. We stay busy because we love our town.
No, you do love the town. I mean, that's one thing that nobody can argue with. You do love the town, and it must be frustrating when people kind of come out of the woodworks and just like we talk about it once in a while, keyboard warriors, and
that's okay. And it's okay. Look, I'm very thick-skinned when it comes to that. I don't like some of the comments made about us personally. I remember a time when, I don't know what happened, but we were 2 or 3 weeks or whatever it was late in paying our taxes, and somebody posted it online. There was a photo opportunity once where our family ended up, one of our sons ended up in a picture along with my wife and I with a not so popular and now convicted political figure.
like gold bars.
Yeah, and they put a picture, and somebody put a picture of my son up there, and it was nasty, but they took it down.
Yeah.
But it's things like that. Look, for me, none of this is necessarily personal.
Yeah.
We have a problem, and we have to address it, and that would be probably a good segue. Let's talk about the schools.
Yeah. So where are we at now with the schools?
Well, presently, and I do believe a lot of it wraps itself around several Facebook groups, and I'm going to certainly say that ours has one of those that have really has made a difference and changed the tide. I do believe our group was the catalyst to get the last 3 elected off of the slate, and I believe we'll be the same catalyst that'll get the next 3 elected onto the board. Where we are right now is a budget debacle with an explanation that stinks from the top. It appears that there were line items of about 70 or so.
71.
71. Thank you. That puts things like 4th grade music in jeopardy. 75% of our students take some form of instrument.
Fees.
Well, and the fees are there. See, all of these issues are big, but when you really dive into each one of them, you got to tilt your head a little bit. So, I will say this: Mayor Cohen has done a great job in flat taxing his side of the equation, but the district is not. The district over roughly a 3-year period will raise their side of taxes 10%. All right, we're in year 2 of that at around 3.7%. So, but to the mayor's point, and I agree with him, and I've had conversations, it's good that he kept those, but there's ways to sort of tax people without calling it tax. And I'll give you an example. Activity fees or activities. You have kids. Were your kids involved in any activities in school?
Yeah.
Every year?
Yeah, mostly.
Yeah, 1 or 2 a year?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's call it 2 a year. All right, so 2 a year. So the activity fees are going from about $55 up to about $125 and $135. You have 2 kids, each of those kids taking, to your point, 2 activities a year. It's $540. If you happen to have a younger kid, early learning kid, you're about to experience the second fee increase within a year in that area. You now have eliminated 4th grade music, which now, if you want your child to have that head start in 4th grade, you're now doing private music lessons, which average $30 to $50. Let's call it $50 an hour. You've essentially just taxed anybody with 2 kids plus 1 young over $1,000 per year.
Yeah.
But did they raise the tax? No.
Yeah.
But how many?
It's like tolls.
Yeah.
Tolls is a hidden tax.
No, yeah, it's a shell game.
Yeah.
All right. The bottom line is, what does it take for a family to live in this town, a town that they're moving into for the schools? Now, if you eliminate, I have a strong arts background and a strong arts belief. I am a musician. I did a lot of theater growing up, and to know that there are certain kids that won't be able to participate in these activities because of fees is sad. But the next maturation of this is that then, if there are less keys involved in a program, does the program still remain viable, and do you just eliminate it?
Right.
So this becomes a new fancy way. So there's a lot. So there's a lot of things that wind up with a famous, district philosophy is it's not our fault that kids didn't sign up. It's not our fault that, but look, it's not our fault that so many kids have to pay $135. That's not our fault,
Right.
but it is your fault. It is your fault because it's poor planning. It's years in the making that brought us to this point. So that's where we are today. Look, you compound that on things that just make you just scratch your head. It's a normal procedure for the district who can't borrow on their own to borrow through the township.
Right.
There is right now pending an $11.5 million loan, a bonding that the district wants to add on top of this $200 million budget that they have. So an extra $11 million. That's a lot of money. It's, a 5% of their budget increase on a loan. Now,
Usually it's around 4 to 6 million. Yes.
3, 4, 5, 6, somewhere in there. And keep in mind that any of that lending has to be used for capital improvement. So for those watching at home, well, why don't they borrow it and pay all these teachers? Not a capital improvement.
Right. Yeah.
So they've asked for this large sum of money. I've come to find out that this year they'll retire about $3.5 million worth of debt. So it's a net plus increase of about $8 million. If they were to default, now keep in mind, they're going to be paying this now. You just heard it from activity fees. Mr. Giuliani has already mentioned several times that enterprise dollars are down, and we know, we're not getting the revenue. I did see from Fast Break that they are now renting. Excuse me. They are now renting more with the dance clubs that come into Hammersholt, which is terrific. But what happens if the district were to default? And is it a possibility? I don't know. Is it? I mean, it's just like you and your household.
Not doing well.
No, not doing well. And certainly when you're not doing well, if you couldn't pay your heating bill,
Right.
I doubt you'd put a pool in that year. Right? So, but it's okay. Priorities are priorities. But what if they default? Here's how it works. Let's just say the township tax roll gives 65% of the money roughly to the district. What would happen? Say it's $11 million default. That following year, which would be 5 years from now, by the way, they would decrease the amount of what they would give to the district by that amount. Now you add that to something like that happened this year. Let's just say the same thing that happened this year happens on that year where that default occurs. Now we're $16 million in the hole.
Right.
All right. This is really bad practice. It's a dangerous, dangerous shell game. This is concerning. But back to the program, the things that affect people most. They won't have the music. They're going to have program reduction. You're going to have pull-out classes for music and all of that. The way that was presented at the last board meeting was a little disturbing because the board president kept saying, if we don't pass this tentative budget, we don't have a budget. I would have rather have heard from leadership, we need you to go back to the drawing board and we need you to find things that are less impactful to our student population, especially music.
I mean, you dealt with these people. Are they capable of that? They could be nice people, but are they smart enough to do that? And I don't mean that as an insult.
No, listen, I do believe that everybody on the board is smart. As a matter of fact, during the presentation last week, I was particularly impressed with Dr. Figueroa, Dr. Braun, and Dr. Pan. And their questions were deep, meaningful, and they required response. And unfortunately, too often in that meeting, there was no answer, which was concerning. A simple question asked by Dr. Braun. On these pieces of paper, how many staff members are we talking about are going to be cut? I don't have that number. That is an unacceptable answer during budget season. unacceptable. To Dr. Boley, head of curriculum, how many students will be affected, or something to the effect from Dr. Braun regarding music. I might have to go back and watch the meeting. I'm going to say 16 seconds of silence, maybe. Like we just asked her the combination to her locker. It's what? Why do you not know this? Which says to me that this list was put together haphazard. I will say this, that I don't believe that list. If there were 71 line items, the first line item on that list should have read, "We will be saving $500,000 on administrative changes." Now let me tell you about the other 70 items. Because that wasn't in there. And when that question was asked, we don't talk about that in the front. Well, you just talked about a whole bunch of teachers who were able to figure out, 50% of the music staff will not have a job if this budget goes through. But you won't tell us how many dollars are going to be saved? Come on.
Right.
Come on.
And it seems like it's still the case that it's mostly the teachers and not the administrators.
Well, what's interesting, being the only administrator of this group, is that teachers are petrified to speak up on and rightfully so. Look, they've already had their coffee makers taken away. You don't want how much more of their dignity can you strip? So, but what is interesting about this group is, and I've stuck to this, and I don't betray this trust. I get on average 15 messages a week.
Wow.
Private messages from teachers.
That's a lot.
And some administrators.
Oh,
I'll leave that there.
Yeah.
And I have been told, although unconfirmed, that we will be hearing very shortly about administrative cuts.
Okay.
Now, who do I think should be cut? I put this on Facebook, and I'm not afraid to say it. Not a reflection of job performance. I'm not going to say whether he's doing a good job or not. I think you know how I feel inside, but that's not important. But you take a guy like Mr. Giuliano. The guy's been over 30 years. He's got plenty of pension coming through. He demands a very large salary. His position was promoted to assistant superintendent. I did vote for that. I'm sorry I did. And plus his benefits, it's probably his savings, if not over, very close to $300,000.
Wow.
Now, when they dismissed Lou Dr. Figueroa last year, the rationale given by Dr. Valesky is that we were going to take his responsibilities and pretty much just spray the infield. We're going to give a little bit over here, a little bit over there. And that was great. And you know what? It seemed to work out. I mean, if that was the plan, it seems like it was well executed. So why wouldn't the same rationale be used for somebody like Mr. Giuliano? I think Mr. Crotchfeld is probably more than capable on his own to handle many of those responsibilities. And I think you could find somebody else to be board secretary. And I'm going to go out on a limb here, but I bet you somebody in the district could be in charge of coffee makers as well. So, I think that's possible. Yeah. So, yeah. Or maybe a side gig, or maybe contract and maybe bid it out. So, but these are things that I would think would be already in the conversation, where we don't have to sit around and waiting for it, and then our feet to the fire for a March 19th deadline. I'm watching the comments online. People are in tears. I've had 4 phone calls from parents who are petrified that they're not going to be able to afford certain types of programming, either in school or on their own, that they counted on and moved to this district for. One parent I spoke to moved here 4 months ago, and their kid will start 4th grade next year. Oh. And music was the primary reason why they moved here. And they came from a musical family, and one of the parents is actually a professional musician in New York. So, and this is a thing, and they're upset.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. And professional musicians aren't often, getting a high income to absorb these fees.
Oh, no. I know where they're living. I know how they're living.
Yeah.
They're not owners, they're renters.
Okay.
And they moved here for a very, very specific reason, which was ripped out from under them.
That's unbelievable.
No, it's sad. It's sad. Now, and Rob, all of that said, look, they're going to have to make cuts. There's no doubt about it. I just find it very difficult to believe that the list that they brought is the best solution. Now, if they're going to close down, that saves a lot of money, operational costs, things like that. If that's the solution, It's not my favorite idea because I know it's a great neighborhood school, but that may be a solution. I don't know, but not the arts.
Have they done the redistricting and the numbers where they could tell if it's going to be? From my understanding, they have it. So how can they say, yeah, let's even put that on the table without knowing where they're going to put the kids? Like how can you do that? Like
redistricting in general has been something that's been I have to use the word because it was the word used, a priority, when I first got on the board, and that was over 6 years ago, and it's never been accomplished. We have people, I believe it's Kensington, that we have students in that neighborhood who go to 3 different elementary schools.
Yeah.
You know, and so within that, you have inefficiencies. All of these things I would think could be addressed. But now we're really moving this conversation into what's the expectation of who does what when.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we're talking about goals, accountability, and measurement for the one employee of the school district, and that's the superintendent. The superintendent, as told by President Guas, I don't make these things up. When asked the other night, does the superintendent have goals? Keeping in mind, the superintendent works for the Board of Education and and the Board of Education, and the answer was he sets his own goals. I want that job.
Wow.
You know, I want that job. When I was 13, I was a paper boy for the Home News. My district manager or whatever they were called came to me and said, your goal this year is 30 new households, 30 new subscriptions. At 13, I had goals.
Yeah.
How do you manage a situation without anything that's measurable, deliverable, and accountable? And that is the culture of the current Board of Education.
Yeah, and that's worrisome. I mean, my wife sees me when I wake up. Every morning I wake up with anxiety because there's goals, there's expectations of me every day, even though I have my own business with my clients.
It's tough.
Yeah.
And there are days I don't want to do things. You know, I'll be the first to admit. I mean, but I know that if I don't pick up that phone one more time or talk to that one more person, I've kind of sold out my family. And in this case, a superintendent has a really, really big family. And in our district, it's over 8,000 kids. It's a bunch of teachers. It's a bunch of staff. And it's a boatload of taxpayers.
Yeah. Well, what do you think the protection of him is by some of the board members? Like, what is that? That's the part I don't understand. I mean, it's very clear cut that the pulse of the community of how they feel about the current superintendent. What are the other board members, you know, the 3 or 4 board members see that nobody else in town seems to see?
Rob, and that's a fair question. You know, what I'll rephrase it, make sure I understand it correctly, is what is it that so many members, whether the current board or recent boards, what is it that they're seeing that they could walk away with only positive viewpoints on how things are?
Right.
You can't ask that question without really asking, what's so special about the superintendent? And it was interesting when it came up under President-elect when all of this was going on, and President-elect was grandstanding at several meetings talking about things that are being said. She made sure that we knew that our superintendent's very special because people love his snow phone calls. Remember that? And I said, well, yeah, that's good. And they are fun. I thought they were fun. And the COVID calls were.
And he copied them. There was another superintendent in another state.
Let's pretend I didn't hear that. Okay. I thought they were very original. Yeah. I thought the COVID calls were informative. But again, the question, the comment that was made, and I think all of this is predicated on when this contract thing last year was going through, and eventually it didn't go through, and you know, there were meetings held, and the township was admonished for even questioning, having the gall to question. President-elect at the time was sure to let us know when they decided that they were going to not proceed at this time. This was late last year. Mm-hmm. She let us know that all the good things that happened in this district are because of Dr. Valesky. Mm-hmm. All the good things.
Oh, good.
Yeah. All the good things happened to Dr. Valesky. And she also let us know at the time that Dr. Valesky has asked that they not proceed with the contract extension and raises, even though the entire board wanted him to proceed. The entire board wanted him to move forward. And the board sat silent with that statement. And it got me thinking, as like, that can't be true. No, that can't be true. You know, they can't. So, and then eventually one board member did privately begin to message people saying that they, in fact, were not aligned with that assessment. Right. Well, all right. Well, it would have been nice if you perhaps...
and they could have said it publicly.
There's nothing that would have prevented... As a matter of fact, they should have said it publicly.
Because they changed things.
Because perhaps so, but the president misrepresented the facts, and that's wrong. Okay. That's called lying.
Yeah.
All right. So now we come to the questions like, what is it about? Why would the current president Guas really treat Dr. Valesky as if he is the miracle worker of the district? And then I started to really think about it, and you know, not character digging, fact digging, and I found out some interesting things. As a matter of fact, one of them, President Guas said the other night. So President Guas, you know, certainly, is whatever age he is, I would say easily at the last quintile of her career, has gone out and she's gotten her principal's certificate. She told us the other night, and I didn't know that. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Now, why would you get the principal? Then I get an anonymous email that she is conducting within her district, because they have peer-to-peer training, a presentation, a professional development presentation about furniture in the 21st century in school systems.
I know where this is going.
And there's a picture of some furniture and how people learn, you know, with I forget what they call it now, but you can kind of dynamic classrooms where you're a couch, you're sitting on the floor, you've got a rug with trains and numbers. You know, all of these different things are now, and that's an industry. And I saw that, and she's teaching on it, and she's highly protective of our superintendent. And then I remembered his LinkedIn page.
Yeah.
And our superintendent has a side hustle that is all about classroom furniture in the 21st century. Unbelievable. So I don't know if there's a connection.
What's the chance?
You know, I don't know. I'm not alleging that there is or isn't. I'm simply saying, I don't know. Are there some promises made? Is it now, which concerns me, because I'm hearing murmurs that this contract is now going to come back up.
Yeah.
So wouldn't it be, I'm just going to paint an after school special picture. Wouldn't it be nice if a superintendent got a contract extension and made some administrative changes where perhaps a principal's job opened up? Mm-hmm. And in the meantime, an individual was out talking about furniture that perhaps could steer to, and any individual for that matter who has a furniture company that deals specifically in this area that she has now become apparently an expert in, to the point where she's comfortable enough. And I don't know.
So
I don't know.
And just so everybody knows, this was not a setup question.
No. I just found out about this last night.
But listen, like my whole thing, every time I had discussions with people, like, you know, when I'm driving to my office, and my whole thing, I'm like, because I feel like a conspiracy theorist, like something doesn't make sense to me. None of this makes sense.
It doesn't make sense.
It's like somebody has their hand in some cookie jar at some point. And, you know, you can't be, in this town, you can't be talking like that, or you're a conspiracy theorist.
Listen,
a crazy guy. But it doesn't, a lot of it doesn't make sense.
In the words of your last podcast guest, it just seems unusual. You know, I think I did a good impression. It's just unusual. And it is unusual. It's unusual that you have this level of idolizing of an individual.
It doesn't make sense.
And protecting him and stating how great.
A visionary.
And then apparently comfortable enough to start talking the merits of 21st century furniture and education. I don't know.
Do they think everybody's stupid, or they just don't care, or like
I don't know. I really don't know. I do know that if they're not guilty, stop acting like it. If you're not doing something wrong, will you please stop acting like you're doing something wrong? When you fixed the appointment at the time, they seem to have this strain, and this started back a while ago, but definitely President Lax perfected it. And by the way, I'm gonna say we got lucky on this one. But when President Lax works very heavily in pre-arranging the appointment of somebody who's her superior, and I will say that aside, it turns out that this individual, I believe, is one of the best board members out there now. Awesome, and I do think, I think Mr. Cummings is an outstanding board member, and
he earned his stripes.
And you know what? And if I need to say, great job, thanks for the referral to President Lax, I will do that. At the time, though, it did seem a little unusual.
He was going against one of our friends at the time. One of our friends.
He was going against. He was going against an individual whose skill set was in commercial construction, and that was during the days when the high school is going to be the thing. So anyway, I put that out there. Again, those are the sort of things that make people wonder, do they have the eye on the ball? And why, and it was mentioned last year, why so many no-bid contracts? I mean, they do things that raise eyebrows, and it's just unnecessary.
Yeah.
And if they're not doing anything wrong, stop acting like you are. Yeah, stop it.
It's just the love affair is so strange. At least Eyes on AB has a blog post tomorrow. I'll probably call you tomorrow for more information on the 21st century kids furniture.
I'll send you the. I'll send. I was sent the internal invite for this thing, and with President Guas as the presenter. I had known her for several years. I didn't realize that she was an expert in educational furniture. So, but it's good to know that we have one, because perhaps one day we'll use that furniture. So anyway, look, all joking aside, where do I see us going? I will tell you right now, the district, there's an enormous amount of hope. All right. There's the ingredients necessary to create change are all around us. We do want to identify 2 strong candidates to run with Dr. Braun. When that happens, it's a cultural shift. Now, some viewers may say, oh, then you win and then you become them. No, that's never the intention. In fact, I will say that Dr. Braun and Dr. Figueroa have done really a nice job in trying to assimilate in spite of some of the resistance that they're getting. Yeah. But they're holding their ground and they're asking all the right questions.
With a smile.
But there is an enormous amount of hope. Look, we do have the ingredients of being an absolutely outstanding school district. Mm-hmm. But when you're in an environment which I will easily say at least 25 teachers have used this word, so I can use it comfortably, that there's an existence of a hostile work environment, and it's uncomfortable, and there's fear to explore creative curriculum, and all of those things are the things that used to make East Brunswick a blue ribbon district. Mm-hmm. And those were the things. I cannot begin to tell you what education was like, when my kids were, second, third grade and so on. And we're moving away from that, not because teachers aren't great, is because teachers are told to stay in a very narrow lane. That's what's being told to me. I do not have firsthand knowledge other than what teachers who are in the trenches are telling me. Mm-hmm. If I'm wrong, correct me and I will apologize. But that is what I am hearing.
Yeah, no, I'm hearing a little bit, not as much as you, but absolutely. And it's bad for any type of profession to go to work where they're on edge, but a teacher, our kids can't afford it.
Look, there's retaliation in our district. There was one teacher who told me a story. She said she spoke up and said something about a year or so ago at a board meeting. And the next thing, she had her supervisor evaluating her class was in something like 4 straight weeks of evaluation.
Well, that's the thing I don't think a lot of people understand. That's what happens. They kind of, you're teaching your class, and all of a sudden there's a supervisor just staring you down.
Walks in the room, sits in the back row, and starts watching.
And waiting for you to make one hiccup. And
And you know what? And I grew up in that environment. My father was one of those supervisors, and
Right.
he would come home and he would let me know that his superintendent told him that, Rob's let's watch Rob for the next 4 weeks
Right.
until something happens.
Yeah.
That's not how it's supposed to work.
Right. Yeah.
The great districts do great things. We have a great district. We have all the ingredients to have an extraordinarily successful district. Do I think there's an administrative shift? I would like to see Dr. Valesky do the right thing. Let his contract expire. Let a new set of eyes come in, reevaluate, relook at things, and see if we could do better. I don't think we necessarily need a burden of salary and benefits at this point in time from Mr. Giuliano. And that is no reflection on his job performance whatsoever.
Well, let's just say everything went the right way. We got the board members we needed to change the culture. Giuliani left, Victor left. We're still in a mess. How long do you think would take with the right people, competent people, for things to turn around?
I think it takes an enormous amount of cooperation. I think the conversation would have to involve all stakeholders. I think you start to bring the union in. I think you have a really serious conversation with the teachers of our district. Again, I go back historically in my family. I do remember my mother's salary freeze for 2 years, back when she was in the Middletown Township many, many years ago. We need a reset.
Yeah.
All right. We're really far down the road, but nothing is ever forever. All right. With great leadership, great things happen. Even the best know when it's time, and they step aside. The greatest leaders. What's that?
Seinfeld.
But I'm thinking somebody like Steve Jobs. Yeah. Steve Jobs gave up the reins. Tim Cook taking over. There's moments in time where you want evolution, and we have a system in place that is almost resistant to change. The same old, year after year. I am desperately hoping that we do bring a couple of new faces onto the board. It's been stated before, that you put your slate on and you're the puppet master of them. I can tell you with 100% certainty that is absolutely not true. I even with any other board member, I'm not looking for people who agree with me.
No, you're not. And I was a big part of it. I can back that. In fact, you gave good advice when it was needed. You would suggest some talking points, look into this, look into that, but that was it. You were very, very much low key. And I'm not discrediting anything, any effort, the help that you did, but you definitely weren't a puppet master. That would be the last.
No, I want critical thinkers in the seat, and that's what's missing. A critical thinker is not that, well, the board president said we need to vote this way, so we're going to vote this way. The board president's going to pick up the phone and call 4 other people. We're going to have our 5 votes, and we're not even going to bother to call the other 4. That's the culture that I'm referring to. That is a normal culture. That's what made me ineffective. That's why when I say I quit, that's why I quit the board. But with that, then I didn't quit the cause. Right. And I think that's something that needs to be highlighted. I never left the cause. The cause is for all the right reasons. It's for the students, primarily. It's for the staff, to give them an environment in which they feel that they could creatively teach to get great results. It's for the taxpayers to believe that they're getting value for living in this town above what they necessarily have right now. And it's just for the reputation of our town. Yeah. We have to build on that.
And you certainly proved that you're more effective off the board with all the things that you accomplished, getting 3 people on out of the 4, the slate.
Yeah.
And, we have a sample now that it works, and there's no reason why you can't do it again.
Well, can't do it again. And I'll tell you what, I'm not saying I want to do this necessarily at this time. Yeah. But I'm going to let you know right now, my name is not off the table for this next board run. And it's I would like to see 2 new faces, and 2 people who want to make a cultural shift on this board, but if that doesn't come to fruition, I will serve.
Wow. Wow.
And this is not an announcement.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying if that's what it comes to, but I'm not going to let us devolve as a result of poor management and leadership. We have to put an end to that. That's what we need to stop.
Stop the bleeding.
Stop it. We have to stop sliding. We have to put make a stake in the ground so we can have, I believe all of the ingredients exist for us to be the best district in the county, if not the state. But I can't believe that more than the people who make those decisions.
Yeah, I think we're in a good spot with people being involved, and a lot of people agreeing that there needs to be a change. And the fact that the incumbents didn't get voted back in last election,
it wasn't punishment; it's hope.
Yeah,
and there was nothing wrong with either of the two that didn't get voted in. Right now, what we're looking for are candidates who can easily articulate honest hope. We have to change. I can't emphasize that enough. We are in a very bad trajectory. And to hear people say, no, we're actually okay, that's untrue. That is an untrue statement. Look at our scoring. Look at every measurable scoring across the board, the measurement of our district. We are not moving in a positive direction. And it's not because we aren't prepared to do so.
If somebody wants to run for the board, what should they do?
I encourage anybody watching this who's not already a member to absolutely join East Brunswick Action Group. It's a great place for honesty. An enormous amount of information comes from that group.
You'll learn a lot for sure.
You'll learn a lot. You don't have to say a thing. Participation is not a requirement, but definitely it is filled with good information. There are a couple of other sites around town. It's not a site based on bashing. It really is forward thinking. If you want to be a candidate, you could reach me. Best way to reach me is eastbrunswickaction@gmail.com, which I have. And also the best way seems to be through Facebook Messenger. Or if you know anybody I know, and if you happen to grab my cell phone number somewhere, you're more than welcome to text me.
Awesome. Well, it was a lot of fun.
This was fun.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And thanks for coming on. Thanks for everything you're doing. I appreciate everybody involved, and it's been good being part of the team. So
you've been an unbelievable asset. We appreciate you. I know on behalf of the group, and I will speak for them. And if anybody disagrees, they can take it up with me. I think you're outstanding. Thank you for everything you're doing in town.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeff. Okay. Bye.